So my American journey started when I was 13 years old, in 1995. I was a kid in high school, actually, just starting high school, I guess, in Yalta. That is now, uh, it's in Crimea, which is now occupied, currently occupied, I should say, by Russian Federation. But then it was Ukraine. And Yalta is a sister city of Santa Barbara, California. And back then there was an exchange program based on archaeology. There's lots of archaeological sites in Crimea, and there's also some Spanish forts and things of that kind in California. So there was a 1 month program, based on which there were some Americans coming to Yalta and visiting different locations and sites and archaeological digs. And then for 1 month, Ukrainians traveled there. Um, and when we were digging the El Presidio of Santa Barbara, the Spanish fort, just the top layer where, we couldn't do too much damage to the artifacts, just sifting through sand mostly until noon. And then after noon, we would visit museums and stuff. So when I mean, I think America has an immense soft power in this, that most people in the world want to at least visit United States and to admire America greatly, and I was no exception. So after that program was over, I was determined that I want to get American education, at all costs. I'll do whatever it takes. And I got such a chance when I was 16. There was an administrator from an association of private schools of New England, who said, if you want to study in America, you can't study in a public high school because it's taxpayer money supported. But if your parents have money, then you can go to a private school, and I'll help to make introductions. You might get a scholarship because it's not every day that they get students from Ukraine. And so he made some introductions, and I forced my parents to pay for for a private school in Connecticut. They did give a good scholarship, so it wasn't they didn't have to sell their house or anything, but it was substantial. So I went to South Kent School in Litchfield County in Connecticut, just for a year and a half, long enough to pass the SATs and look at colleges. And cost was also a consideration there. So I did have a list of about 10 colleges. I think I applied to 5 after being, talked out of applying to like Yale and Harvard by the college counselor. And one school that I visited and I liked and did give me a pretty good scholarship was Elizabethtown College in central Pennsylvania, Amish country, Lancaster County, South central Pennsylvania. So I spent 4 years there, getting a bachelor's degree in international business, and traveled to Strasbourg. They had a very cool program to study abroad in all sorts of locations around the world. So I used that opportunity as well.
Right.
And American,
Based
yeah.
in America, as a student in America, you did a study abroad to France.
Right. But Americans have the best study abroad programs because it's not just, there is a dorm and you have your classes. There is a huge cultural aspect to it. We went to so many different museums, and there is a person living in France who is creating a whole schedule of activities to do. So it's not just students bumming around bars in Europe. It's you get to see like the original cuisine. You get to see the wineries, went to the theater in Paris, which is so obscure. It's the theater of absurd, and it was like this post-World War One phenomenon when European psyche was shattered, and they had like the craziest art, and it still makes no sense. I mean, maybe it makes more sense to me now. But yeah, the best study abroad programs are American ones because there's so much, they're so rich, there's so many activities, and it's just so much more than being a student in France. And it was students from lots of different colleges. So it's also a very cool experience. So to feel, so I felt like I'm an American in Europe, which was also kind of great.
Right. Yeah.
Because you are a privileged group also as an English speaker who has all these resources and activities. And French students were jealous how, oh, you Americans. And I was like, I'm not American, but I'm perceived as American. This is great.
Right.
Yeah, so then after graduating, I've worked for a software company in Harrisburg, which already then has hired some software developers from Kyiv. I actually went on a business trip or two with them, continuing working in IT industry as a business analyst, and with a different company. I moved to Vermont, Montpelier, the state capital of 10,000 residents, actually same number of residents as Elizabethtown, where Elizabethtown College is located. So I lived there as well. But my original goal was always education. I want to get the best American business education because America is the most successful economically country in the world and culturally, and I want to be a part of that story. So, what business education can you get? MBA. So after 4 years of working, I went to Thunderbird. It's a school that now merged with Arizona State University, but was then an independent graduate school in Phoenix, outside of Phoenix, in Glendale, Arizona. And that was a great experience because it was the most international school in America with lots of foreign students, a very internationally minded school, a very sort of trade and diplomacy focused um, school with cultural context and all of these things that you know sometimes create barriers, but it was focused on how to overcome and find common ground. And that was my choice, even though I got into better ranked schools on some of these rankings, but in terms of the best international business schools, that was the best. So then, I was prepared to go on to Wall Street or whatever, and then the mortgage crisis happened, and my illusions were shattered about Wall Street being such an excellent place. And I, having technology background with these two two software companies that I worked, I was trying to find work with startups. I did kind of volunteer at startups, let's call it internships, in New York City, in San Francisco, but as a um, as a student or as a legal immigrant in the United States, which I was, I was on student visas and work visas. I needed to get another work visa to stay, and when my student visa expired, I just had to leave. And since 2010, I've been living in Kyiv, and I think this is where I'll stay until, as long as I have left.
Right. As long as you have left.
Right,
End of your day.
and I love traveling to America. I have so many friends. There is a family where I lived in Connecticut that is my second family, and I mean, the most amazing experience of my life has been linked, to America very firmly, and I still think it's the best country in the world. Um, to me, though, I think I don't like being an immigrant. I like to be a person who belongs. And I think in Kyiv this is the place where I found that I feel that I belong and don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just I feel home here.
Right.
It's not a great place. It's not a nice place. It's not perfect in many ways, but I think it's the most fitting.
Right. Yeah, in some ways it seems like you and me are a mirror of each other in terms of like the amount of time and also the amount of Facebook friends is comparable, um, which is kind of crazy because I've never met anyone like you who has the opposite experience.
I
Like
think it's a good experience to have. I think I would recommend everyone to actually live in a different country that they were born in, to understand more even about themselves and about all these things that we take for granted just by being where we are. I think you also have learned more about America from the outside perspective and about how you are different by being American in the world.
I mean, because I taught English in Ukraine and endless source of enjoyable conversations is the topic of what's different about us or what's different about our countries.
Right now, a more helpful narrative are the similarities, so it's the values.
Yeah. I mean, the differences are usually trivial anyway. It's like,
Right,
for example, oh, we don't have electric tea kettles in America. Like we don't use
right,
them, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Or, back in the day, we don't have kefir, you know, stuff like that. I mean,
yeah,
trivial things, but
exactly.
fun.
I mean, but from my American days, I still write. It's mechanical, but it is a pencil. Most Ukrainians don't. It's like pencils are for kids. Who writes with a pencil? I really enjoy writing. Using a pencil because
Okay,
it's
I didn't know about that. I never noticed that. So, but you're yeah, difference in mentality there. Okay, yeah, I never
I don't
noticed.
know why. It's very trivial, but it's fun, quirky little things that that form a culture, a distinct culture.